Good audience. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I'm going to call the court to order now. So welcome. We're all on the jury because the jury is out. The judge is making the decision about climate change and where we stand, and all of us are part of the jury. And so we're all part of the decision-making process. I'm Elizabeth Valencia, representing FIABCI, the International Real Estate Federation, and I'm here to welcome you as we explore a story today about how can we use our skills and our relationships to work on this climate issue for the world. So we're going to start out looking at an existing smart city from Zurich, Switzerland, and this will become a model for other locations in the world. So this first one is existing. We wanted to find something to use as a pilot that was real. And so we'll look at this video of the smart city and hold your questions and thoughts. Thank you. We were founded in 1951 to create a global network for rebuilding after World War II.
We have actually a Swiss chapter that has brought to my attention a special project of a green city, and we want to feature the benefits of living and working within that community.
Our focus on the power of place is to showcase the change makers who are creating the healthy and holistic communities of tomorrow. We're proud to feature a project identified by our Swiss chapter, Living the Sustainable Experience.
Green City zeichnet aus, dass es zum einen eine gemeinsame Idee hat. Die gemeinsame Idee ist das Leben nach der 2000 Watt Gesellschaft. Es gibt sehr viele kleine Projekte und das ist ein Lebensgefühl, was hier die Leute zusammenhält. Und das ist das Schöne und deswegen arbeite ich auch gerne hier.
So the idea of the Fair-Teiler is to reduce food waste in a very easy and pragmatic way. 30% of the food in households is thrown away, although it is good and edible. And the idea is, if you have too much food, maybe you went to the supermarket, bought too much, and then you don't have the time to consume it, or you go on holidays, you can just put it in the cupboard and other people can take it up. It's not a social idea, but an ecological idea that food that is still good and edible and looks nice can be just taken by others.
Smarte 2000 Watt Quartiere sind der Schweiz ihre Antwort auf den Klimawechsel. Wir versuchen von heute mit einem Absenkpfad, der vorgegeben und definiert ist, auf 2000 Watt und 2000 Kilo Klimagas pro Person zu kommen im Jahr 2035 und von dort mit neuen Technologien, die wir heute noch nicht kennen, können bis Net Zero ins 2050 gehen.
Die 2000 Watt Kriterien sind für FIABCI in der Schweiz wichtig, sie sind weltweit wichtig, weil sie für alle Menschen auf der Welt wichtig sind, wenn wir unsere Klimaziele erreichen wollen. FIABCI hat als weltweite Organisation mit Niederlassungen und Chapters in über 70 Ländern die grosse Chance und den Hebeleffekt, die bekannt zu machen und auch in unsere Programme weltweit zu integrieren.
Als wir damals am Reisen waren, haben wir gewusst, wir wollen irgendwann zurück in die Schweiz, aber nicht durch irgendein Wohnprojekt, sondern wir sind extra zurückgekommen wegen der Green City. Wir haben uns für das 2000 Watt Projekt entschieden, weil uns der ökologische Fußabdruck enorm wichtig ist im Leben. Und Wohnen macht ganz einen grossen Teil aus dem ökologischen Fußabdruck. Und genau das kann ich hier in der Green City ausleben. Wir haben eine wunderbare Gemeinschaft obendrauf noch zu diesen 2000 Watt Ziel. Und das ist wunderbar und ich hoffe, es gibt noch ganz viele so Projekte schweizweit und weltweit, die genau das umsetzen.
We are very proud with what we did here together in Green City Zurich, and of course we use that to expand, so we built many others in Switzerland, and we wish to build much more in Switzerland but also outside Switzerland.
Nachhaltigkeit ist für unser Unternehmen schon immer ein wichtiges Thema gewesen. Wir haben aus diesem Grund im letzten Jahr auch unseren Transport CO2-neutral gestaltet. Ab diesem Jahr werden wir auch unsere Standorte CO2-neutral gestalten. Und das spielt natürlich so ein Standort wie Green City eine grosse Rolle.
Ich kann von hier raus und finde ich diesen wunderbaren Platz da draußen mit wahnsinnig vielen Leuten. Meistens ist es auch sehr schön. Das hat sich auch sehr bewertet bei uns in der Zeit der Pandemie, also als wir uns zurückziehen sollten. Also es war sehr schön, einfach diese Begegnungen, die wir dort haben konnten mit verschiedenen Leuten aus ganz verschiedenen Kulturen. Das macht das auch so lebenswert hier. Und daraus sind einfach wahnsinnig tolle Situationen auch entstanden und auch Projekte, die wir hier gemeinsam mit den Nachbarn aus ganz verschiedenen kulturellen und sozioökonomischen Gruppen, aus Hintergründen, können wir einfach alle zusammen miteinander eben sowas Gemeinsames machen.
Thank you to our sponsors and partners. We want to hear about your successes and challenges. We're all in this together.
Thank you. And Anna, you will be our first spokesperson from Zurich. Anna Schindler is coming to us. She was involved with the processing of the smart city. And Anna, if you will please tell us a little bit about your experience and how you see this moving forward in the next 3 years, of where you see this project going and where it has been.
Yes, thank you very much, and hello to everybody. The project we have seen in the film is really the first 2,000 watt area in Switzerland. It has been certificated, it has got a certificate. In the meanwhile, it has become like a new part of the city with 4,000 people more living there and 4,000 people more working there. It has had and a lot of affordable housing, 1/3 is affordable housing. It has had a big impact because the idea, the concept of the 2,000 watt has originally came from ETH Zurich, but it has been adapted there for the first time. There has been a huge influence of politics, also of the parliament, and now we already have 4 sites, 4 2,000 watt sites in the city of Zurich, and they are really like role models. And the whole city, is on the way. We have had a referendum in 2008. I think they said in the film that the whole city will become a 2,000 watt society. We have gone even further on the way to net zero right now, net zero till 2040. But this project has been, I think, the first that has given such an impulse to the other ones.
And I think Switzerland has been asked to look at trademarking this process so that it can be expanded throughout the world. How do you see that happening?
Yes, I think on one hand, it has been Switzerland has really put a lot of effort in this process. We already have right now in 2021, 38 areas, 2,000 watt areas like this one you have seen, like Green City, is a certificate, and 24 of them are still in development, but it has been a big influence all over Switzerland. But it also has had an impact on the city's politics, because it's not only about 2,000 watt, it's about optimizing the existing buildings energetically everywhere. It's about using renewable energy in all that we construct. We have a new structure plan for the city that's right now on the vote, on the referendum, and there energy consumption and sustainable development have a very important part, play a very important role in this whole structure plan. And we have plans for district heating for big parts of the city, energy networks. So there's a lot that has gone on since this first great example.
What is your feedback from the citizens that live in the city? One of the things we talk about in marketing is being able to show people benefits, and what do the people feel? What makes other people envy the residents of the 2,000 watt city?
I think people here in Zurich are very aware of all the problems, because you have seen this in this referendum on the 2000 watt society 13 years ago, with more than 75% of people who said yes, we want that, we want to go, we want to start this path. And nowadays see people living in these 2000 watt areas. They live very well. They have nice houses. They have a good balance on energy consumption, and I think it's a really, for people here in Zurich, it's really an aim to get there. We have also a big climate movement, so people are really interested in getting there, and they don't object. For instance, we have a big program started right now for changing heatings. So oil and gas heatings are replaced by renewable energy. And all the owners we have 70% of private owners of our buildings, but they all are working together to support this initiative.
Thank you very much. I hope you can stay with us for a few minutes so
Yes.
we can hear about the project concept in India, and then we'll come back for questions. Thank
Yes.
you. Thanks. Okay. Suhas, you're joining us from Pune, India, and we thank you for taking time today and to be here with us at COP. This is a very important conference. Your president made some very important comments here. It seems India is on board with the climate initiatives. And we'd like to hear a little bit about this project that some might equate to the Swiss watch as being very detailed and very specific. And as you're adapting this to India and to your Pune area, tell us a little bit about your experience and how you think this is going to benefit India and how you think it will be accepted.
Thank you very much for giving me an opportunity to be here today, and good evening all. So let me tell you about, am I audible? Yeah, thank you. So let me tell you about Pune region. So Pune this region is also called Pune Metropolitan Region, is it's in Maharashtra, which is one of the third largest states of India. And Pune being a very kind of important place in the history of the country. Pune was seat of most powerful Maratha Empire in 15th to 16th century, extending its power till Afghanistan. It was also very active socially and in other terms also during the freedom struggle of India. Pune is also a seat of education centers. Various universities are present here, and we also are called Oxford of the East. So PMR, which is Pune Metropolitan Region, is around 7,000 square kilometer and having population of around 7 million. So this is the region where basically we are now trying to address climate change and carbon, the concept of implementing carbon neutral cities. Pune being the educational center, it is also is a powerful economic driver because of the presence of automobile industry, pharma. We have IT, a lot of IT industries working here. We are well connected with entire India, with airports, with port, with highways. And because of that, and its proximity to Mumbai, this is the most robust growing region in the entire country. So if you look at the latest growth figures, the PMR region, which are the villages or the towns which are close to Pune Municipal Corporation, are growing at the rate of 93%. But overall growth rate is around 20%. So rapid development is what we are witnessing. At the same time, we are concerned about our natural assets, our environmental issues, because that is definitely putting pressure on us. So balancing these two, having a sustainable growth balancing development as well as our natural assets, our environment, looking at the climate issues. So these are real challenges, and we are that is where actually we are now looking forward to, and we are basically looking at 2000 watt smart city concept as addressing these issues. Yeah.
What would your advice be to other leaders from other developing countries that might be considering this?
So I think we are in a very unique situation here where, and I think most of the developing countries also face this situation, the regions also face this situation where the aspirations of people, the population is growing, and then we need to address those aspirations in terms of economic growth, in terms of connectivity, in terms of infrastructure, in terms of other economical activities. But at the same time, it is putting huge strain on your natural assets, your environment. And that having that, striking that balance is a real challenge. And I think all of you must be facing these challenges various parts of the world. What we are talking here is we have witnessed degradation of forest, we have witnessed encroachment, excessive pressure on agricultural land, very kind of development, very unorganized development, putting a lot of pressure on civic amenities, putting a lot of pressure on other social as well as other infrastructure. So what we are trying to do is we have prepared a development plan for our region, and we call it a development plan, and it is basically based on a sound concept of sustainable growth. So, and where we are basically talking about how we can adopt SDGs in terms of protecting our environment, in terms of having a growth model which actually promotes development, but at the same time, is equally concerned and sensitive about environmental issues. So what we are trying to do is we have come up with this development plan for next 20 years for this entire region of 7,000 square kilometer, where we are talking about townships which are theme based. For example, we have divided the entire region in various urban centers where we are now promoting theme-based townships. Township, and for each region we have given a theme, maybe industrial, could be logistic, could be IT and ITS, could be agri development, biotechnology. And so we are trying to develop theme-based townships which are self-sustainable and which are in line with 2000 watt concept of work and live hubs. We are trying to talk about walk to work kind of. Yeah.
Thank you very much. I want to give the people in the audience here, we have a full boardroom that is here to listen to, but I'm sure that there are some questions that people might have, and we'd like to have a couple minutes for questions before we move on to our next group. So
yes, Mr. Commissioner, my question to you is, can you probably hear? To Mr. Commissioner, my question to you is, you mentioned India has a very strong IT sector. What I read in both international newspapers and online Indian newspapers, that the challenges of climate change are extrapolated due to the huge water consumption needed for the IT industry. Coca-Cola had to shut down production for months, so the residents would actually have water. And the government actually had to commission trains with 250,000 liters of water per day to just make sure that the residents in Delhi, etc., had enough water. How do you see changing mobility mix influencing this? Because if we replace all fossil fuel cars with electric cars, we just replace one problem with the other. And for example, I'm from a country where biking is very popular and made cool, and for example, the train station has a 15,000 capacity bike storage. How do we make that cool in India? And how do you see, for example, the economic opportunities for your country in that aspect? Oh, and my name is Thomas, by the way.
Hi, Thomas. Need is actually mother of all inventions. That we believe in that. We understand the scarcity of water. We understand, and we are facing problems because of climate change and global warming. So people are more and more, aware, and they're becoming more and more sensitive towards all these issues. For example, let me tell you, Pune, my region is one of the first regions where many people are now basically buying electric cars or electric, scooters. So the change is coming from there because they have realized that this is going to happen. We are looking at new technologies. We are looking at water recycling. So so whatever technologies are available in terms of energy saving, energy consumption, you avoiding fossil fuels, and because of the scale and the scope of the whole thing, I think we definitely have an advantage. The policies for Government of India, the policies of my state are really environment friendly. We are promoting a lot of green initiatives in terms of achieving our commitment which are made by our Honorable Prime Minister. My state has a initiative called Race to Zero, and we are trying to basically achieve it through various interventions, policy interventions. You're changing people attitude, changing people response to the whole thing, and I think collectively we will be able to definitely address these issues. And I take this opportunity. Basically, we need, whatever you say, whatever is said and done, you need huge capital. You need a lot of support in terms of technology, in terms of expertise, in terms of experience, and that is where I'm looking at you and for that matter at this forum. So we need interventions from your end, and you are always welcome to invest in.
Okay, Suhas, I'm very sorry. We're on a very tight time schedule, and we have to give 3 organizations time. But I can give Thomas contact information to get back with your people and see if you can have a more complete conversation between the two of you. Thank you so much.
Thank
you both Duhas and Anna for being with us this morning. And I understand you may have another meeting later, so please, whenever you need to go. If I may, I would like to introduce Peter Graham.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Peter is the CEO and Executive Director of Global Buildings and Performance Network. So Peter, take it away. It's your 15-20 minutes. Thank you.
Well, thanks, Elizabeth, and hi, everybody in Glasgow and around the world, and to our network of experts in 22 countries and all our collaborators in India and Indonesia as well. I'm here representing a collaboration between the GlobalABC, GBPN, and the Program for Energy Efficiency in Buildings, or PEEB. And we're going to talk just quickly about how we can incorporate building sector actions into NDCs. I have some slides, Elizabeth, just a short deck. Can I use my screen?
Slides, Peter, slides, please.
Yep. Okay, I'll put them on my screen. Make it easy. Okay, I hope you can see those. So
yes, we can.
Yep, can, great. Okay, so the GlobalABC's status report this year has really set a big challenge for us to keep global warming at around 1.5 degrees. We have to actually halve building sector greenhouse gas emissions by 2030, and that's in just 8 years' time. And it is possible to be able to do that with current policy know-how and finance knowledge. But what we require is a strategy, and including ambitious building sector actions in nationally determined contributions is really a powerful way to achieve, and we hope exceed, climate commitments while simultaneously stimulating economic development. The status report shows that in 2020, 136 countries had included building sector actions in their NDCs, but there's still significant ambition gaps. And so we need to do more to support countries to develop building sector actions which are really transformative and also importantly fundable. So this is really where the NDC guide came in, and when we developed the guide, we also realized that we needed to support countries who are using the guide with practical advice, tools, and experience. So first is the guide. The guide was written by GBPN for the GlobalABC, and it provides a three-stage approach to incorporating buildings actions in NDCs. The first is the mapping stage, and the mapping stage is about determining the status of a market in terms of building stock, energy demand, associated emissions, stakeholder mapping and capability assessment, and it generates the data for the next stage, which is the prioritization stage, which engages stakeholders in a process of determining which actions provide the best impact and contribution to achieving climate commitments, and of course, other public policy goals. The implementation and monitoring comes next. We plan that with stakeholders to ensure that there's buy-in from the agencies and industry sectors that are actually going to be doing the transformative work and trying to step our way towards these zero emissions targets. So this guide's been incorporated into actions of developing building sector NDCs in Vietnam and Cambodia, and we'll hear from Vietnam in a minute. But in order to really make the application of this guide practical, GlobalABC, PEEB, and GBPN have been developing this toolkit, and our colleague Andrea Moro is on the call too, and acknowledging his agency in developing this framework. And what we're doing is filling in the kind of tools, practical advice, and sharing examples with of the countries that have gone ahead to develop building sector actions in their NDCs with those countries that are aspiring to do so. So this is a practical toolkit. We call it a living toolkit because there are so many new tools coming on and new methodologies being developed by countries that are starting to develop fundable and transformative building sector actions for their NDCs. So you can see here the scope of support that the toolkit's providing, everything from the kind of tools that are required to develop a baseline assessment of emissions from a building sector, from a building stock, through to methodologies for establishing MRV baselines, financial incentives and non-monetary incentives, policy best practices, evidence bases, as well as examples from countries that have gone ahead to develop the building sector actions themselves. So it doesn't matter where your country's at, or indeed whether you might be a non-state actor as well with building sector commitments in mind, you can use these tools and the guide. So if you want more information, you can actually go to the GlobalABC website and click on the link here, and you'll see a button that says Collaborative Platform. You go there and you'll find the NDC Toolkit. There's opportunities to be able to contribute to the toolkit if you do have case studies, best practices, knowledge to share, experiences to share, etc. You can also interact with that collaborative platform. So that is the NDC guide and the NDC toolkit, but it's really hard to understand what it is until you see some examples of how these kinds of methodologies are used in practice. And so for that, I think I'll hand back to you, Elizabeth, as the chair, but then on to our colleague Thoa from Vietnam to talk about the NDC roadmap that's been developed there. Thanks, Elizabeth.
Okay, thank you. Kim, welcome to the stage. We're happy to have you with us this morning. And please share with us a little bit about how you have implemented this program in India. I'm sorry, in Vietnam. Sorry.
Yeah. Hi. Thank you very much for providing us with an opportunity to share our experience from Vietnam with you. As Peter mentioned, we make use of all of the tools so that we try to incorporate building and construction sector into the NDC of the whole economy. From Vietnam, NDC is built up by the Ministry of Natural Resource and Environment with the methodology to cover the entire economy. But then with the, in collaboration with the Global Alliance for Building and Construction, we received the format and methodology for build up the NDC Building Roadmap with a sectoral approach that try to identify all of the opportunities that we can try to reduce the GHG emission from the construction and building sector. So that work is with the all of the toolkits from that Peter just mentioned, following the analysis, country analysis, and then formulation of the NDC Building Roadmap, and try to get all of those documents, and then the tool used by the Ministry of Construction, so that we have the first draft and the final draft for the Vietnam NDC Building Roadmap, hand over to all of the people working in that field of work in the Ministry of Construction. So the work is contributed to the as an input for the country to build up so far the national climate change response action plan, and that work following the effort from GlobalABC, try to make the methodology available for global level and then go down to regional level, and now sub-regional of ASEAN, the 10 countries of network also to build up the NDC Building Roadmap. And we hear from that at the country level, we have Vietnam, Cambodia, and Indonesia. So that that all in by some way, the topic is reaching out to our higher level of the country leadership. And then you hear a few days ago, our Prime Minister already make a good, let's say, commitment that Vietnam wanted to reach the net zero emission by 2050. That is a very encourageable to all of us who work, the one who working in different sector, especially building sector, so that we can see the vision clearly that, okay, we have to work hard to get all effort done so that we can reaching the net zero by 2050, especially in the building sector, where we see technically a lot of opportunity, and then we have to work on more on the financially instrument or mechanism. So make all of the efforts in research and in planning and in policy making can be supported by the good financial facility. So such as the green bond or green financing.
Thank you very much, Kim. That's very heartening. Peter, we're going to open it up to questions here from the boardroom. And who has anything they would like to address?
Okay, thank you. My name is Blondel Selenu. I'm coming from Cameroon in Central Africa. There is not a lot of things that I would like to add on what is happening now, just to say that we are really interested about all the technologies and all the projects that can be made in the issue to provide us good resilience. For example, in Cameroon, we actually facing a lot of problem on access to energy, access to water. There is not a sustainable transport policy which is really developed. I think that is the place where we can do a lot of things. If you're talking about Cameroon, you can also talking about Ivory Coast, you can also talking about Central African Republic or Chad. There's a lot of places in Africa where we can develop a new cities, a new vision. So because we do not have what I can say cities. According to this small village for us. So we are really interested to see how together we can working to address this kind of issue. I would like to also mention that the issue of waste is an issue that we should address to have a resilient city, and we are really interested, and we would like to see how together we can do that and how it can happening. So if there is some of you who have an idea on how we can put in place a strategy, because we know that all strategy is starting at the level of at the level of strategy, at the level of policy. At this level also, we need to have a lot of thing to do.
Peter or Kim, do you have a comment to share from that? Kim?
Yes, I think that from Vietnam, we have the central government, but we also have the municipality government. And then if we talk about the resilience in the city, that the sustainable energy development strategy needs to be addressed first. In our understanding here in Vietnam, that energy balance used by the city and then the security for energy first. And then after that, we can talk about energy saving or energy efficiency, so that we can pave a way for reducing emission from energy, because we know that the emission from related to energy take a big part of the emission. Doesn't matter it happen it consume in the transportation sector or construction or all of the high intensive energy sector. So when we can manage the energy balance for the urban area development, then we can manage the emission. So it can come to the different sector, and that is the way we see it. Try to manage first in the transport sector, yeah, with vehicle and other things, and then go down to the construction sector, industry, and agriculture within the territory of that urban area that we are addressing. I don't know whether it can suggest something for Cameroon, but that is the way we do here in Vietnam.
If I might add too, just on the point of strategy, one of the things that we have found really important in developing strategies for sector transitions, like building sector transitions, is really building local coalitions and building stakeholder groups that can help to inform government policy, but also develop the real buy-in that's going to enable a strategy to be implemented. And I think that's very important, because it also helps to establish the kind of ambitious but achievable near-term targets that are necessary to really keep that transformation motivating. And I think with the experience with I was looking at the Vietnam process and also a process from Cambodia recently, developing the NDC actions for the building sector. And it's really important to be able to have a broad, as Kim was saying, sort of a holistic starting point where you can see how the urban policy is integrated with the building sector policy and the transport policy. But I think, you know, it's certainly important to establish policies, but it's also really important to establish commitments to targets, measurable, achievable, and ambitious targets. And we talk a lot about 2050, but don't forget about 2030. We need to be able to set some very practical and achievable milestones towards that zero emissions goal. And I think that's what this process of developing roadmaps and even the bottom-up strategies that GBPN's involved with do. It gets the coalition behind a target and then starts to develop integrated strategy to achieve it.
Thank you both very much. We've got time for maybe one more question.
To the representative of Cameroon, I was very glad that before the conference started, a lot of world-class athletes from all over the world spoke out about the need to tackle climate change. I'm a former race thrower. I cycle on my race bike. I've been a coach of the Ugandan rowing team. I think sports and the how you say, the passion that combines all of us can be a good way to win people over. For example, in the Netherlands, cycling is very common, but you need to make it sexy. Like, and you've got some of the world-class football players, runners, potential Tour de France wins in cycling. I really am hoping for MTN Quebec to do well in the next Tour de France and Vuelta. So I would advise you to invite your local heroes to participate in this, making it cool, making it sexy. That if you are a 12 or 18-year-old, or if you're a minister, that you want to be on that bike, on that electric car, on that bus, to an event, and that PEEB will cover that easy. And I think the societal change to help bring about the 2030 targets Peter rightfully talks about is making it much sexier for people to get involved, and also local and accessible, something they can participate in, apart from the wide policy things we need to do.
Thank you. It's good that people can be helping within the boardroom as well. Peter and Kim, thank you very much. We're going to, we appreciate you being with us. And Andrea, you've been waiting patiently and listening, hopefully being excited about what you're hearing. And some of you may have heard the announcement on the loudspeaker. We're being constantly reminded here at the COP about the importance of wearing masks. And believe it or not, but one of our members of our pavilion actually was diagnosed Saturday morning and is in quarantine. So it is serious, and we're sorry to interrupt your conversations with the background noise, but that's that constant reminder. So Andrea, you have the last 20 minutes of the program, and take it away.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you. I'm going to share my screen. Okay. So maybe I have a presentation a little bit more technical. I'm representing an international organization called iiSBE, that stands for International Initiative for Sustainable Built Environment. iiSBE has a main goal that is to promote the adoption of assessment systems by public authorities to improve their capacity to act, their capacity to deploy effective policies and action plans. And we have developed an innovative set of assessment tools that is devoted to measure the resilience and adaptation of the built environment to climate change. This because if we have the overall objective to improve the adaptation of the built environment, we need to understand what are the best strategies, what are the most effective actions. So if you can't measure what you want to improve, it's quite difficult to deploy effective actions. So it's necessary to have tools for measuring the risk of climate change at the different spatial scales. So specific assessment tools and specific indicators. You know that there are many existing sustainability assessment tools already available at transnational or national level, but those tools have not been conceived for measuring the risk due to the climate change. So we have developed this set of new tools called resilient built environment tools that are useful for measuring exactly the risk and the adaptation of buildings, small urban areas, settlement, and territories. And the tools are based on the risk assessment approach of the IPCC, so where the risk is related to the hazard, vulnerability, and exposure. So what we did basically has been to mainstream the risk assessment in the sustainability assessment methodology. And we used a specific methodology that is transnational and open source that is called Sustainable Built Environment Method. So basically we have created a new generation of assessment tools, creating a sort of hybrid. So in mainstreaming the risk assessment in the sustainability assessment tools. This transnational methodology, the SBE methodology, has been developed through a cooperation process started in the late 90s, participated by 25 countries. And this method is based on a basic assumption. It's not possible to share transnationally one unique common assessment system, because each region has different conditions, different priorities. So it is necessary to use for assessment local tools. But in the same time, we have to measure how much we are progressing toward the common goals. So the way to find this local global approach has been to define the principle of the generic frameworks. So basically, it's possible to define transnationally common measuring system, common assessment systems, but you need to contextualize to be used in your local context. So from a common source, it's possible to generate local harmonized assessment systems. Over time, several generic frameworks of this kind have been developed, starting from maybe the most famous is the Sustainable Building Tool, or SB tool. Then others have been generated at the neighborhood or territorial scale. Now this principle has been applied to generate this new family of generic frameworks, the RB tools, that is possible to use to create a contextualized assessment system for the adaptation of the built environment for any region, any country in the world. The possibility, these tools have been developed through a series of European projects in the field of Interreg. Interreg is the regional cooperation, territorial cooperation in Europe. There are different programs in different areas, Alpine Space, Mediterranean, Alcotra, French, Italian. So through this series of projects, we have been able to define the new set of tools. And we have collaborated with dozens of organizations in Europe, both public authorities and scientific organizations. It's very important to keep the collaboration with the public authorities, so the end users of the systems. It will use the rating tool, the assessment tools to support the decision-making processes. So how it has been possible to mainstream the risk assessment in sustainability assessment tools? But we use the impact chains. The impact chains are well described in the vulnerability source book published by GIZ. An impact chain is a framework, a logical framework that connect a risk to an hazard, an impact, and to the vulnerability. So we have adapted the sustainability tool framework to the risk assessment based on the impact chain. And we have identified reference climatic hazards and reference risk groups, people, property, infrastructures, etc. We have created a matrix with the risk groups and the hazards, and crossing risk groups and hazards in a specific spatial scale, for instance, building scale, you can easily identify what is the potential risk. For instance, if you have a heat wave, so this is the hazard, who is exposed are the inhabitants, the occupants of the building, and the risk, of course, is for the inhabitants' health and comfort. So using the impact chain that connect the hazard with the risk group, it's possible to identify what are the vulnerability aspects in this case of a building. It is possible to do the same for the neighborhood or for a settlement or for a territory. The vulnerability aspects are the assessment criteria. So what has to be assessed to verify the level of adaptation, of the level of resilience of the building. And each criterion is connected to an indicator that represents the sensitivity and to a value of the indicator that represents the level of adaptation. So we have created the set of tools with the 7 hazards and the 6 risk groups. And each risk groups contains, its category of criteria contains the specific vulnerability aspects that we can assess. The different tools contains a different number of criteria and indicators that have been defined through the impact chains. There are around 50 criteria in the building tool and around 150 in the neighborhood scale tool, about 150 also in the settlement tool, and more than 200 in the territorial scale. The system is a scoring system, so all the values of the indicators can be transformed in scores, and the scores represents the level of the adaptation and resilience of a building, neighborhood, settlement, or territory. Higher the number, more adapt is the building, for instance. And it's also possible to aggregate the value of the different criteria through the weight sums. And the weight of the criteria depends on the local context. It depends on the importance of the different climatic hazards and on the importance of how many elements are exposed. And it's also possible to carry out the assessments of the adaptation resilience, also taking account the future climatic conditions so that you can predict what will be the level of adaptation of a neighbor or a settlement, depending on the different RCP scenarios. At the end of the assessment, you get a scoreboard. In this scoreboard, you can have it for a building, a neighbor, the settlement, territory. You get scores. The scores represent how much what has been assessed is adapted to the 7 climatic hazards. You can also visualize scores at level of categories, so risk groups, so you can see how has been managed the risk for the different risk groups. And also you can see the scores at a single criterion level, so you can visualize how much is adapted the building, neighbor, etc., to the specific vulnerability experts. We have developed an online platform that is accessible, is open source. Any authority can access it, and it's possible here to create your local assessment tool. It's possible to use the platform to carry out the assessments. There is also a GIS module where you can upload information and you can calculate the resilience of a territorial or urban scale. We have also developed a second function, a second online tool that is called Felicity, where you can easily create a 3D model of any urban area in the world. You can carry out simulations concerning the CO2 emissions and the primary energy consumptions of buildings. And you can use this information that is not always easy to get at territorial urban scale. You can use this information for carrying out the resilience assessment. So this is to tell that assessment systems are very useful to provide information to take the right decisions. If you don't have information, decision-making could be quite weak. You need to have assessment systems to carry out the diagnosis of the actual situation, to select the best scenarios, to monitor the implementation of scenarios. And this kind of tools would like to provide a contribution to establish a sort of common language in measuring this kind of issues. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Andreas. And is Teresa coming?
Teresa is not present in person, but she sent me a video that I can share with you if we have time. It's a 7-minute video.
Yes, we have time.
Okay, so just give me the opportunity to start it.
So any of you be thinking about questions you might have. It looks
Hello.
like you have some interest.
Today we're going to talk about how the world wants to work and what needs to change.
Okay.
Imagine that you are above the earth looking down. What do you see? You see dark ribbons across the land. These lines mark underground waterways and riparian systems. Forests will thrive above and around them. This is where nature wants to create its wilderness corridors. Nature lives in ribbons, rivers, coastlines, mountain ranges, and forest corridors. She does not form grids. Look at the earth again. We have paved 1 kilometer of road for every square kilometer of habitable land around the world. Most of these roads form grids. The center of every grid block, the hole in the donut, is an island. Science writer David Quammen said, "Islands are where species go to die." Because our road base is deep, dense, and compacted gravel, the roots and the fungi that allow trees to communicate through the soils cannot pass under our roads. Trees trapped in these islands will weaken and die over time. Our grid pattern destroys eco-corridors and the wildlands and the wildlife they support. As we work and shop from home and we begin to share cars, we will need our roads less. It will eventually be easier for us to abandon the paved grid and to align the roads we do need with nature's eco corridors. So where are all these roads going? Look again, this time toward the coastline. See the big cities there? By 2050, 80% of us will live in coastal cities. Although they are near water, our cities function as deserts. This is because about 70% of the unbuilt surface of every city is paved, and roads and roofs do not absorb water. They encourage runoff. Whenever nature sees runoff on land, she reads that land as desert. All deserts contribute to the process of desertification, creating more deserts by disrupting the natural rain cycles. And this effect is felt 400 miles inland. The land impacted by desertification will experience drought and wildfire. It actually costs us less to work with nature and let our cities become green. Look along the coastline again. See the river mouths? These are wetlands, peat bogs, and delta. Notice that most of our cities are built here. This is because our industrial age needed river ports for the distribution of goods. Wetlands and peat bogs are carbon and pollutant scrubbers. They should never be drained or built on. If we do not build on wetlands, we do support wildlife habitat and we prevent floods. Okay, so look at that blue planet below you. From up here, it looks like we have an infinite supply of water. But that water is 97% salt, 2% ice, and only 1% fresh. That 1% includes all the aquifers, rivers, and lakes. Without fresh water, there is no life on land. So we must follow in nature's footsteps and reuse and protect fresh water locally. The oceans also produce 70% of Earth's oxygen. Oceans cannot replenish our oxygen if they are sick. We must keep our oceans clean. Take a look at the white clouds up here in the atmosphere. Water vapor, not CO2, is the most powerful greenhouse gas. The ocean atmosphere dynamic is a magical dance that controls our climate. 3 of every 4 molecules of CO2 in the atmosphere today was put there by us. The oceans have absorbed 90% of the heat energy resulting from the greenhouse effect we have caused, or that is equal to 5 Hiroshima bombs per second since 1990. That's the energy that the oceans have absorbed since 1990. So this is the reason our atmosphere has not heated up as much as expected, but the oceans are now reaching heat saturation. So total decarbonization of human activity must start now. Okay, so imagine that it's still daytime, but the lights are coming on as dusk approaches. Look again at the land. See the power lines strung across it. They run for miles to hydroelectric, coal-fired, or nuclear power generation plants. There is a 70% loss of power from the plant to the plug because of these line losses. These centralized power plants are an industrial age legacy. Centralized power supports industries we don't need and has a 70% inefficiency built into it. We need to do what nature does, use waste and solar energy locally. Okay, so now drop down to city level, look around in the night. The buildings are massive. You see lights everywhere, but the schools, the offices, government buildings, many other buildings, shops are empty, as are 1 in 5 apartments. We are 20% overbuilt and 30% unused worldwide in Europe, North America, and China. To get there, we have removed more stuff from Earth since 1990 than in all of human history. Half of it was for construction, and 75% of it is already back in landfill. You might think it's because we've got more people and population is growing so fast. Well, global population grew 12% since 2010. Construction grew 22% in the same period, almost double the rate of the construction of the population growth. Nature never overbuilds and wastes resources like this. We need to follow her example and build only what we need. What are we really doing when we think we are building well? By ignoring human, social, and environmental capitals, we are not building well. We are creating a debt to the future. We need to understand how nature achieves its own resilience. Then we can direct our actions to support all life on Earth. So how do we change the world? The answer is we don't. We need to stop trying to change the world to support our ideas. Instead, we need to change our ideas to support Earth. Thank you for listening. I'm Teresa Coady, an architect from British Columbia, Canada, and the author of Rebuilding Earth, Designing Eco-Conscious Habitats for Humans.
Okay, we have 1 minute if anybody has any questions. I would, Peter?
Yep. Hi, Andrea. I couldn't resist just asking about whether one of the users or intended user groups for your resilience risk assessment would be finance and investing.
Yes, it is. We already had meetings with in the investment sectors, because actually the value also of real estate funds is also linked to the sustainability and future resilience of buildings. So the investment side is very somehow worried about how much the climate change can affect the value of the buildings. So we already started to discuss with some very important stakeholders in this field about how to carry out a sort of a triage of their building stocks to understand the actual level of adaptation resilience, and also to project into future this level of adaptation, to understand in 2030, 2050, what would be the performance of the buildings and the building stocks, considering the possible IPCC scenarios. So the answer is yes, it's something that is will be taken more and more into consideration by the financial sector.
Thank you.
Kim? Kim, please. You're muted. You're muted.
I'm very interested in your presentation, Andrea, especially in FIABCI. Yeah, in Vietnam, we know how to calculate the point source, let's say emission from one building or from transportation, like a line source. But area source for the whole city is something very challenging for us. So your FIABCI, you mentioned for energy consumption and carbon emission for the whole city. That would be very interesting for Vietnam. I would like to learn from you more on that.
Yes, thank you. And the reason why FIABCI was developed is exactly because usually at urban or territorial scale, you have problems to get reliable and credible data concerning CO2 emissions and consumptions. This platform is based on GIS data, and you can create 3D models, and inputting only very few data, you get very reliable information, quite useful to take decisions at urban scale level about the strategies to be implemented. So I will provide you after this session more information. No problem. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all so much for participating, and especially these people in the boardroom. But thank you to so many of you who are remotely listening to these experts offering advice, and know that you can go to their websites and locate additional information. They're here offering their services for you. So everybody who is participating, everybody who is joining us here, thank you for being here, for listening to this story. And please, in the next 3 days, find at least 3 people to share the story with. That's how we make a difference. Thank you all for your time and your energy. Thanks. Bye.
Thank you.